Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1978 film Jaws 2, as I promised, because I'm going through all the Jaws films. Now, I'm going to say off the bat, well, one, my energy level might be a little lower because I'm feeling a little tired at the moment. Also, I might sound a bit stuffy because I am a bit stuffy, so please excuse that in this video, but going to do my best. The other thing I want to say up front, obviously this film does not have the same love put into it as the original that Steven Spielberg did. It doesn't look nearly as amazing. It doesn't have nearly as inspired cinematography and directing, but it still looks pretty solid. And in the end, I think it's a decent film. It's not a great film, it's a decent film. The other huge thing with this film, the pacing. The pacing for the first Jaws is awesome in my opinion. It just moves, moves, moves. The pacing for this one suffers quite a bit from here, from time to time, but I'll comment on that a little bit more as we're going. This one is directed by Jeannot Szwarc, Szwarc. That's my best guess at it is Szwarc, who also directed things like Night Gallery, Bug, Kojak, Enigma, Supergirl, Smallville, Fringe, Supernatural, and Grey's Anatomy. A lot of things. Still working up to pretty recently. Written by Carl Gottlieb, who also was involved in writing the original Jaws script, also The Jerk, Jaws 3D, and the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, a little bit of that. And Howard Sackler, who also wrote Fear and Desire, The Great White Hope, Grey Lady Down, and Saint Jack. Don't know any of those films. The island for this film was actually constructed of plastic material and was actually super slippery, which caused a lot of issues when they were shooting the film. And the island I'm talking about was the power station, or like the power, what did they call it? Power Junction Island or whatever. Yeah, that was actually all created out of plastic. So you can understand how something like that being wet would be very slippery. So apparently it was a big hazard. It was very hard for people to stay on it. And presented a decent amount of problems while filming. Roy Scheider, who obviously comes back to reprise his role as Brody, originally did not want to do the film, but Universal talked him into it after he left the set of The Deer Hunter, because apparently he had some sort of like multi-picture deal with them and had walked off the set of The Deer Hunter, and they kind of said, "We want you to do Jaws 2." He's like, "I don't want to do it," and they said, "Well, look, you walked off the set of Deer Hunter. Contractually, you were obligated to do that. How about we cut you a bit of a deal and we call it even if you do Jaws 2?" And because I think otherwise they were going to try and go after part of their salary back or something like that. So good on him for not seeming in this film like he wanted to get out of there, because I think he gave it his all with the character. It felt and looked like the exact same character as from the original Jaws. Now, obviously, the writing's not there. He wasn't as great of a character because of all the other characters around him not being as good and the story in general not being as good, but also it's just not as new of an idea, so there is that makes it not as fun and interesting. Believing he had completed the definitive shark movie, Steven Spielberg would not entertain the idea of directing the sequel, even though they wanted him to, which, can you blame them, because he did such a phenomenal job with the first one. Plus, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was also in production at that point, so he was moving on. And he's not wrong in saying that he had, made the quintessential or the penultimate shark movie, because really, you can't think of any shark movie that measures up to the original Jaws nowadays. I mean, I would challenge you to do that. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Let me know any shark movie out there that comes close to the original Jaws, as far as like the story and how it looks and the pacing, all that stuff. The film was about $30 million to make, which is a budget about three times larger than the first film. You can kind of see that because it seems like they went for like more damage in the film, more stunts, that type of stuff. They did another large animatronic shark within the film, which actually does not look as good as the original Jaws shark, Bruce the shark, but it doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad. I don't want to crap on it too much. It's an okay looking giant animatronic shark, which you needed for this film. I was worried that you weren't going to see the shark barely at all in this film because it's a sequel and it's not known to be as good as the original film. Because when you see a lot of just kind of like the fin action of the fin being out of the water and coming after people. They did stuff like that in the first film where they tried to kind of not show the shark too much until towards the end. So they just stuck in a lot of aspects with the same formula as the first film, but obviously had to make some adjustments. So, I mean, it did work to a degree. Opening credits of the film shot underwater to kind of stick with the opening feel of the first film. Obviously, in the first films, it's kind of like a shark POV with the typical Jaws music. It doesn't start that way, so it's not as menacing, but it does start you underwater. So you're kind of like, okay, this is a very similar start to it. I'm already feeling like the first Jaws film to kind of get people back into it, basically, which is good. Then they have the whole scene where they find the orca. They find the remnants of the exploded orca ship from the first film. And that's a cool moment. That's that cool moment that will keep people in and be like, oh, they're already referencing the first film, and this is even before they see Brody's back in it. So that right there tells you, okay, we're picking up sometime after, the events of the first film. So it gives you a good context of where we're picking up in the film. It is cool that the divers do find the wreckage of the orca. I do like that as a start to the film, like I already said. And an early shark attack lets you know we're back where we were in the first film. We're getting shark attacks already from the get-go, which is what happened in the first film. They establish it quickly, then they kind of take things back a little bit, establish what's going on in the little sleepy seaside town. Well, actually, it's not a sleepy seaside town. It's a bumpin' tourist seaside town, really. Also, that when you see all the photos being flashed by the underwater camera, that those are going to come into play later, and obviously they do. That's when Brody gets the confirmation that he needs at that point that, boom, we got shark problems once again, and he's got to get on the case. But he was kind of on the case prior to that, but I'll talk about that when we get to it. The reveal of the opening of a Holiday Inn lets you know that it's going to draw in potentially more fresh meat for shark attacks. I thought at some point we were going to get more like random shark attacks on people than we actually got, like, people just showing up as tourists, but they seem to want to focus a lot more on putting, the youth from the town in danger more than anything, which I get it because it's closer to the characters who live there. Therefore, the audience should kind of, care about it more because Brody would care about it more because it's people he actually knows. Not that he wouldn't care about, randoms getting killed because he does in the first film, but it's just a little more close to home in that essence. So, like, I get it, but I kind of thought there'd be even more deaths in this film, was hoping for that, and I thought there'd be more randoms, kind of like being the fresh meat flocking to this new Holiday Inn. Note that the hotel guy, I believe his name was Peterson, checked out Ellen after he told her to go make sure that the bar was open and working properly at their kind of grand opening. And he did it in front of Brody too, her husband. So that was like a very subtle thing that was in there, was this like very small subtext of the fact that Peterson wanted to hit it with Ellen the whole time. Like, did anyone else notice that? Because he legitimately checked her out when she was walking away, and he checked her out in front of Brody, and Brody seemed to notice that too, because he makes some sort of comment, because he was like, Peterson says like, oh, I'm so glad to have her, so lucky to have her, something like that, and then he goes, oh yeah, me too, and kind of like gives him this look. So he's just like, I saw you checking out my wife, like, come on. So that kind of, you already know they're going to butt heads the way it's set up, especially because Peterson is so close with Vaughn, and Vaughn, the mayor, had so many problems with Brody in the first film, so that tension, has to stay there, because that's who he is as a character. So the fact that Peterson's so close with Vaughn, that's coming, but then the fact that Peterson's checking out Brody's wife just kind of adds this extra layer of tension and them hating each other, and it works. But they could have gone a little harder on it, but it's fine. The shot of the shark fin coming out of the water and then panning up to show the town lets you know that the shark has basically arrived to being right there, so it is there to terrorize. It's just, showing instead of telling. I like those types of things. I think that's one of the better, shot moments within the film. It's cool. It tells a story without, having characters telling you things. You get the idea that Brody's just been dealing with minor annoyances since the first film, and that's kind of based on the fact that they have that scene where all the locals are kind of like crowding him in his office and just being like, this person's playing their music too loud, and I just don't like this neighbor of mine. It's just like minor petty stuff, and it's so rapid fire, and Brody looks so annoyed by it that you're kind of like, it seems like he's getting bored with his life after the like crazy excitement and danger having to do with his fight with Jaws in the first film. So it gives you a good establishment of how, like, things have really backed off action wise, and it's actually kind of boring there for him. I was convinced that the paragliding guy in this film was going to get chomped, but they ended up fooling me on that one. And then it ends up being instead the water skier who shows up after that, which then was like, okay, if we're not getting the paraglider being chomped, it's got to be the water skier. It is the water skier. Although I will say in this instance, I'm pretty sure there's no way that that great white shark would have been able to catch up with that water skier to chomp them, because I looked it up and great white sharks top out at 35 miles an hour, and I'm pretty sure that that boat was going more than 35 miles an hour. But I may be not thinking about this the right way. Let me know in the comments if you have a different feeling on it. But in the same vein, it's a minor thing. Like, this is a movie, doesn't have to be true to life, all that stuff. It's just something that occurred to me when I was looking it up. I love how after the shark rams the boat, that the woman douses herself in gasoline from the tank that she has on there, and then sets herself and the boat on fire, and then the boat explodes. And the shark explodes partially, because obviously we see the shark later with, the scars and the burnt flesh left over from that explosion, which you initially assume, oh, maybe that shark is dead. Maybe there's still another shark that will be, terrorizing, but that shark is dead. But you see later that it's not. But I thought it was a funny scene and a very unexpected, surprising scene when first the shark crashes through the side of the boat, shocking. Then the woman starts literally, looks like intentionally, dousing herself with the gasoline and then the boat, and then shoots the flare gun into the boat and lights it up and blows the thing up. I don't understand what her thought was there. I guess she immediately was like, I heard what happened with another shark here. I'm going to have to blow it up. Better go with it. It's such a weird, wacky moment of the film. I think it's probably my favorite scene in the film because it is so like out of nowhere and kind of ridiculous and wacky. And it is a bit of a moment of so bad it's good within this film, I do think. My personal opinion. The power line that gets dredged up by Hendrix accidentally, there was too much focus on it that I knew immediately this is going to come into play somehow. Chekhov's power line, you know what I mean? I knew it was coming. I knew this was coming, and as soon as I saw it, I started thinking, okay, this is going to come up later in the film. How? And I literally guessed how this film was going to end. I literally guessed that Brody would goad the shark into biting the power line and it would fry and catch on fire. So I knew it was coming because they put so much focus on this power line. It was a little weird. The dead orca that washes up on the beach looks pretty gnarly. Good job on that practical effects wise. I like the way that looked. It looked gnarly. It's also a symbol of a bigger problem than in the first film because it's kind of showing that the slaying of this animal orca is kind of like a symbolic slaying of the boat, the orca, from the first film, which is where a lot of the kind of like hopes for taking care of the shark issue was in that boat and the people on that boat. So a dead orca showing up and the name of the boat from the first film is an orca just shows a little bit like the shark being like, oh, you're orca, F you, like I chomped that stuff. Just saying. That's how I interpret it. Great line right here from the science-y character in this, who I thought was going to stick around a lot longer, and I kind of wish did. Sharks don't take things personally, Brody. It's a pretty great line that speaks to some points from the first film that you think you can kind of get into the head of the shark, but they're actually unable to be guessed like that because they're unpredictable. They're wild animals, and that's one of the big points that comes out of the first film is you can go off what you think you know about sharks in general, but not every single shark's going to be exactly the same because they're wild animals. They're unpredictable. And the scientist points to that. It's just like, look, they don't take things personally, dude. Like, they're sharks, they're wild animals. And it points to the problem of Brody's taking it personally. At that point, it really reveals that he is taking this personally because here's another shark in his territory trying to wreak havoc. Sharks don't see it that way. They're just here to kill, here to eat. They don't think about it that way. So she's literally saying, like, you are projecting your thoughts and your human personality onto this shark, and it does not work. And that's part of the reason that I wish she had stuck around as a character, because she could have guided him in a more interesting and educated way within the film. Otherwise, it just kind of felt like fumbling around with Brody. I missed that Hooper type character, and for that matter, I missed a Quint type character. I really think that while they copied a lot of things from the first film, they should have copied having characters like Hooper and Quint. Anyone else agree with me? Put it in the comments. The first interaction between Brody and Vaughn is just the same stuff as in the first film. Brody trying to sound the alarm on a potential shark issue, and Vaughn acting like he's being ridiculous, which you can kind of see where Vaughn's coming from later on, but initially you don't. Because Vaughn would remember, we've been through this before, and Brody was right before, and he saved everyone, and everyone knows this. I feel like Brody doesn't get enough credit and enough leeway within the island for what he did, and for what everyone knows he did for the island. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's ridiculous. A little bit, I just wish the writing was a little better there. Solid enough jump scare when Brody grabs the boat piece and then it pulls up that charred up body that like pops up like right at him. Solid jump scare. I think it's the only real jump scare within the film. I think there were a few other like attempts, but that was like a real jump scare, and I thought it was pretty good. I'm usually not big on jump scares because they usually don't get me. They seem a little dumb, but that one was actually not bad. There is kind of too much going on with them just having kind of random shots of people having fun in the water, having fun on the beach. I don't think they were necessarily throwing those in to like pad the time or anything, but it just felt like it was too much. Like they were throwing in too much of that stuff. Like you get the idea. Show like a few people kind of quick, and you get the idea. People are hanging out having fun. Like everyone gets it. We don't need to like dwell in it as long as they end up doing. So just a minor thing that kind of bothered me with the film. I like how Brody looks like a crazy person as he ends up running on the beach, brandishing his gun, and then eventually is firing into the water, and then someone tells him, dude, it's a school of fish. This is actually probably related at least a little bit to the PTSD that he suffers from the events of the first film. Like, he's on edge, and he's having this, like, freak out moment of, oh no, it's happening again. So he jumps to a conclusion because he sees something that looks like the shape of maybe a shark moving in the water, and he starts not thinking, literally not thinking, because who runs down the beach brandishing a gun? Like, he wouldn't do that in the first film. So it shows you that he's been rattled by what he went through in the first film, and it's very much in his head. He can't get away from it. Hence what I'm talking about with the whole PTSD issue. So literally this film does show, not a lot, but moments of him struggling with PTSD to a degree. The incident also ends up setting it up for people not to believe him, and for it to be believable that they would not believe him when things are actually going down later on, because that was a moment where he looked like he wasn't all there. So you can kind of see where people would be like, I think you've had a little too much stress. I think you're not all there. I don't understand him getting fired, though. That's going definitely too far, especially because, like I was saying, I feel like he deserves all that credit for what he did in the first film, that they can give him a little bit of leeway, maybe. Pause real quick for horror hydration. Oh, well, just dropped a lot of water on me. Okay, back at it. You can see how Brody starts to question himself initially, but then the pictures end up getting developed at Fogarty's, and he's reinvigorated because now he's positive that he knows there's a shark on the prowl. Now, this is obviously when he takes the picture, one picture, which there were a ton of pictures. I'm sure there was something else caught there. He takes the one picture to I guess it's like the council, like the town council or something. And Vaughn and Peterson are the ones kind of spearheading the naysayers group. And he's like, look, it's like the outline of a shark's head, and there's the eyeball, and everyone's like, I don't see it. I don't see it. Like, it could look like anything. And from an audience perspective, when I saw that picture, I kind of agree. Like, you can't tell that that's exactly what it is. So you can see where they would think that he's just kind of still stuck in his head about the whole situation and not all there. So he's just projecting onto this and trying to see what he wants to see in it. So you can understand that. So, like, I get it of them being, like, skeptical, but I don't get the move of him getting fired. That seems ridiculous. That's definitely way over the top, in my opinion. So I don't like that aspect of it in the film. Seems ridiculous. Peterson is awfully confrontational with the locals of the town in which he's trying to have a successful hotel. I kind of feel like that's a little weird for his character. You would think that he would actually be very nice to everyone because he wants to get along with the community because he's trying to make money and trying to be in the favor of everyone. But it is also possible, because you get the idea that Peterson and Vaughn are so close, that maybe there's a little palm greasing going on behind the scenes there, if you know what I mean. You do. It was just a matter of time before Mike decides to disobey Brody, his father. And he does. He goes out, and obviously you see this coming because you're like, look, he's got to be in danger. And then it ups the stakes for Brody because it's his own child who's at risk. All that jazz. And already talked about that. You fully expect at least one casualty from the lobster diving expedition. That was an unbelievable tease, in my opinion. I really wish that someone had gotten chomped during that lobster expedition. Someone, has an encounter, and that's the first time you see, like, the shark with the scar and the burnt flesh on the side of its head. So that's a cool moment from it, but I wanted people to get chomped. This goes back to what I was saying. There weren't enough people who got killed in this. There really were not. When you see the scars on the side of the shark's mouth, it makes you think that's the same one that attacked the boat that exploded, and this signals to the audience, this is a hard shark to kill. The original shark from Jaws, very hard shark to kill. It makes you think there was already a boat explosion. This shark's going to be even tougher to get at, which in the end, it's not really that much because it was tricked into biting a gigantic cable and not being able to bite far enough to get Brody. So, I do like the little bit of a clue in the film that after being fired, Brody had been drinking in his truck, which indicates that he had been drinking and driving. So I guess he figured, well, I'm not a man of the law right now, so drinking and driving, let's do it. I guess that's how he gets his release. Just saying. The character of Eddie, his death was actually pretty solid. I really did like his death. He was the one who ended up getting attacked, and they weren't showing the shark portion of it. They were just showing him getting attacked. So a little bit reminiscent of the initial victim in the first film. And I love the fact that he gets grabbed and dragged by the shark, and he whacks him into the side of the boat that he was in. That's a cool moment. It's a little extra brutality from the shark. And then he, ends up getting, like, shaken around. You see all the blood in the water. Probably the best death scene in the film. Definitely the best death scene in the film. The boat, all the boat chaos that ends up happening after the shark ends up going after Jimmy is actually pretty solid. Some good sequences. Those move pretty well. It keeps, it picks the pacing up a little bit. But after that, the pacing gets really bad, in my opinion. They spend way too much time kind of being like, nobody get in the water. You don't want to fall in the water. And then all these teens arguing with each other, which when they started to do that, I just wanted them all to get chomped immediately because I'm like, these characters are annoying. Let's just do away with them. And all the yelling at the little kid Sean when he was stuck by himself on the capsized boat. Like, they just spent too much time with the really, like, trivial dumb stuff, in my opinion, at that point. It really killed the pacing right then. The helicopter scene, when the helicopter gets taken out by the shark, I thought it was really fun and actually kind of funny. I was surprised that they shot it the way that they did with it actually, like, the blade still going and, like, going down in the water. kind of seems like it would be a little bit dangerous to do on set. Just saying. But it looked good, and like I said, it was fun and a little bit funny. I wanted all the kids to be eaten, especially when they're all yelling at each other for no reason. Just going to reiterate that. Brody traversing the power line he dredges up is a bit of a tense moment. I did like that, where it was kind of like dredged up so it was above the water, and he's like trying to like traverse it, and you're like, he's dangling. That shark could definitely just come, jump up, and just grab him right off there. He was just dangling for the taking. I'm surprised they didn't have a scene where the shark takes a run at that. I would have liked to see that. That would have been a nice addition to the film, but it didn't happen. And Brody uses what the scientists taught him to earlier, sharks being attracted to sound, where he's taking the oar and whacking it on that power line. And you're like, this is the smart sciencey moment. But we should have had the actual scientists there to instruct him to do that. Like I said, I wanted that sciencey character there. I didn't just want the sciencey person to be in one scene, drop one bit of knowledge, and then it gets used later, and it makes all the difference. Not into that. And I knew it. The first moment I saw the power line, I just knew the shark would be killed by Brody making it bite it. Now, that said, it was kind of a cool scene. Kind of ridiculous that, like, he's able to get out of the way fast enough, because he's literally right behind it where the shark's lined up. So the shark would have gotten a piece of him, I think. He was not able to be that fast. The shark is quick. The shark is way quicker than him, so that's a little bit ridiculous. I think maybe it should have bitten him a little bit or something. I don't know, but still, like, it getting electrocuted and catching on fire, still relatively satisfying. Not as much so as an explosion, but as we saw, it didn't kill it before. This film is almost as long as the first one, but the pacing is not nearly as great. I'm not going to talk about any of kind of like the themes or like the subtext, because there really isn't so much of that in this film. It would just, if it has anything in common with the first film, like, people would know, especially if you watched my first Jaws review, which I highly recommend. I think I did a pretty solid job on that one. But yeah, I mean, this is a cash grab, obviously, but it's not a terrible cash grab in my opinion. So out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm giving it a 3-star rating. Not bad. I know that my ratings for Jaws 3D and Jaws the Revenge are going to be a lot lower from what I've heard about the films. It will be my first viewing. Oh, by the way, this was my first viewing of Jaws 2, so I'd only ever seen the first one before. So going to be fun. I'm into it. Put some comments down here if you want to talk about Jaws 2 or any Jaws or any horror. I'm down for it. Do me a quick favor and hit subscribe to my channel. That would be awesome. I really appreciate it. It is your best way to repay me if you like this video or any video I've ever done. Also, hit the notification bell button for me, because that helps out as well. If you see me put up a video and you kind of watch it sooner rather than later, it can help me get traction. And yeah, just ways you can repay me. I appreciate that. But regardless, I thank you for taking your time to watch this particular video. And until next time, keep it brutal.